Hello and welcome to Droncom T. Today we're stepping into the world of Necromunda and I'm going to show you how I painted this Delaque ganger. So to start with, I've primed the model black. This will give us a nice even base coat to work off of. The first thing is I'm coming in with some Mournfang brown. I'm going to paint all of his overcoat. So for this, I'm working in nice thin layers, keeping the paint nice and thin. I'm going to apply this all over this overcoat. Now this will take a couple of coats to get a good solid cover all over that coat. But just take your time, work your way around the model and apply this all over that coat. You don't need to worry about being too neat at this stage. If we get any paint over anything else, doesn't matter as we will be painting over all the other areas with other colours. But first of all, just cover that coat with a couple of layers of Mournfang brown. As you can see, after the first coat, there's still a bit of that primer showing through underneath, so I'm coming back in with a second thin coat of Mournfang brown and building it up to a nice solid cover all over this overcoat. With this method you will be able to paint your Delaque gangers really quickly, but because the main part of the model is this coat, it's worth taking the time to make sure you get the coat looking really good. And after a couple of coats, you can see we've got a nice solid cover of Mournfang brown all over that overcoat. So now I'm coming in with some Agrax Earthshade. I'm going to shade this all over the coat we just painted with Mournfang brown. Now you don't want this to pull too heavily into the recesses. If you do notice it's pooling a little bit too much, come in with a dry brush and wick some of that shade away. But otherwise, just cover all of that coat with some Agrax Earthshade. After the Agrax Earthshade is dried, you can see it's really added some definition to that coat. So now I'm coming in with Mournfang brown again. I'm going to place it on all the areas that the shade didn't settle. So you can see here where some Agrax Earthshade has settled in the recesses, so I'm coming in on either side of it with some thinned down Mournfang brown and bringing it back up to colour. You want to keep your paint really thin at this stage. It will allow some of that shading to show through and help us build up to some nice transitions all over this jacket. So just take your time at this stage, work your way around the model, and wherever the shade has settled, come in on either side with some Mournfang brown to bring it back up to colour. It's really worth taking your time at this step and making sure you catch all of the raised areas with a thin coat of Mournfang brown to help bring it back up to colour and building up for those transitions to our highlights later. And with that Mournfang brown applied, you can see it has brightened up some areas of the jacket. So now I'm going to come back in with some Mournfang brown again, but this time focusing it more into the middle of the areas we just placed that previous layer. Because the paint was nice and thin, by focusing this into the middle of where we just worked, it will add a deeper, richer colour to those areas and help with that transition from the darker to the lighter colours. So just work your way back around the model, and wherever you placed some Mournfang brown before, come in with some more Mournfang Brown in the middle of all of those areas to help build up for these transitions. And with that second layer of Mournfang Brown applied, you can see how it's added a gradient to those areas on the jacket. So now I'm coming in with a 50-50 mix of Mournfang Brown and Scrag Brown. And for this, once again, I'm placing it in the middle of all of those areas that we just applied the 2 layers of Mournfang Brown. Once again, keep this nice and thin, and it'll help build up to those smooth transitions to our highlight colour in a minute. Once again, focuses on just the highest points and towards the edges of all of the areas on the jacket. So just take your time, work your way back around the model again, placing some of this mix in the middle of all the areas that we just applied the Mournfang Brown. And after that mix has been applied, you can see it's brightened up those areas of the jacket once again. So now I'm just coming in with the final highlight on the jacket, and that's some Scrag Brown. I'm going to apply this as an edge highlight around all the edges to the jacket. And on all the most raised points and the top of every fold, I'm applying a thin line of Scrag Brown there as well as an edge highlight. So focus this onto the edges, raised details and most prominent folds, and areas that the light would catch the most. So just take your time again, work your way around the model and place an edge highlight of Scrag Brown on all the most raised details. With that Scrag Brown applied, you see it's added a really nice highlight to the jacket and made it look really nice. So now I'm coming in with some Bugman's Glow, and for this I'm going to apply it all over the skin to the model. Obviously be nice and neat when you get around anything near the jacket, because we don't want to get this over any of the stuff we've already painted and highlighted. But otherwise just apply a couple of coats of thin Bugman's Glow to the hands and the face of the model. And after a couple of coats of Bugman's Glow, that's the hands and the face painted on the miniature. Next I'm going to apply some Rhinox hide to the elbow pads on the model. And with that Rhinox hide applied, there's only a few more base colours left to apply. So now with some Corvus Black, I'm going to apply this to all of the non-metal details. So it's things here like the casing to the gun, parts of his shirt showing from his arms, and he's got a bit around his neck as well. Catch all of this with some Corvus Black. He's got some boots sticking out the bottom of his jacket, and there's one at the back as well. All of these toggle parts here on his jacket, catch these with some Corvus Black as well. And he's got these areas of armour dotted in certain places on the back of his jacket, so catch these with a couple of layers of Corvus Black as well. And he's got a belt here, and I'm catching this canister around his waist as well, and any tubing going from the canister to the gas mask. And with that Corvus Black applied, it's really added the details onto the miniature. So now I'm coming in with some lead belcher, and for this I'm going to pick out details like the stock to the gun, and this part here in the middle of the gun. I'm going to catch the barrel as well. He's got this gas mask hanging around his neck. I'm going to catch this with some lead belcher. And also the grenades that are hanging from his waist. He's also got a metal plate on the top of his head. I'm going to catch this with a coat of lead belcher. And with that lead belcher applied, there's just one more base colour left to apply. So for this I'm coming in with Retributor armour, and I'm going to paint any of the remaining details. So he's got these parts here around this canister. He's got these skulls here on his arm guards, and there's also a belt buckle as well. And with that Retributor armour applied, that is all of the base coats applied to the model. So now we're going to start shading the miniature. For this I'm coming in with some Reichland Flesh Shade. I'm applying this all over everything we paint with Bugman's Glow. So that's just the face and the hands, trying to avoid getting this over any of the metal details. With some Agrax Earthshade, I'm going to shade everything that we painted with Retributor armour. Just the canister, the belt buckle, and those skulls on his arm guards. And finally with some Nuln Oil, I'm going to shade everything else. So that's the Corvus Black and the lead belcher and the Rhinox hide. Catch all of these areas with some Nuln Oil.
If you're enjoying the video, please press like. If you want more videos, press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell.
And with those shades dried, I've really added definition all over the rest of the model. So now it's time to start highlighting. So the first thing we're going to highlight is all the black details. So I'm coming in with some Mechanica Standard Grey. I'm going to edge highlight everything that we painted with Corvus Black. So it's the tip here of the boot, all of these buckles on the coat, again thin edge highlight with Mechanica Standard Grey. The gun casing, also give that an edge highlight of Mechanica Standard Grey. on the sleeves of his jacket, any raised points, I'm just giving them a thin edge highlight of Mechanica Standard Grey. And all of these armour panels, I'm giving these an edge highlight with Mechanica Standard Grey as well. Keep this nice and thin, but just work your way around, pick out each of these armour panels with some Mechanica Standard Grey. Now with some Dawnstone, I'm going to do a spot highlight on the gun casing. So all of the sharpest corners, points where two of your edge highlights meet, just put a thin spot of Dawnstone in all the corners. And with those colours applied, that's all of the black highlighted on the model. So now with some Gorthor Brown, I'm going to apply an edge highlight to those elbow pads, just a thin line around the edge and on the fold in the middle. Just give them a thin line of Gorthor Brown. And with those elbow pads highlighted, the next thing we're going to start highlighting is the skin. So for this, I'm coming in with some Cadian Flesh Tone first, having this nice and thin, and I'm placing this on all of the raised areas where the shade didn't settle. So wherever you got some Lycan Flesh shade, leave that in the recess, and come in on either side with some Cadian Flesh Tone to bring it up to a light colour. Be nice and neat at this stage. Try not to get this over anything else we've already painted and highlighted. By keeping your paint nice and thin, you'll allow some of that Bugman's Glow and shade colour to show through, while brightening the skin up to that deathly white colour of House Delaque. On the hands, I'm painting the fingers and most of the backs of the hands, but letting a little bit of the shade show through on anywhere that it's settled. Once the Cadian Flesh Tone has dried, you can see it's really brightened up that skin. So now I'm coming in with some Kislev Flesh. I'm going to focus this onto more raised areas of the model. So it's the nose, the lips, the chin, see the cheekbones as well. I'm going to put this into sort of the middle of the areas that we applied the Cadian Flesh Tone and areas that the light would catch the most. Keeping it nice and thin again, letting those other colours show through. We build up to that deathly pale look that this ganger has. And with the Kislev Flesh dried, there's only one more highlight left to apply to the skin, and that's some Deepkin Flesh, which we're going to apply like an edge highlight on all the sharpest points. I'm putting a line here on all the raised parts of his forehead, the tip of his nose, the bottom lip, and his chin as well. And all the hands, I'm doing all the fingertips and the knuckles, and catching them with a small spot of Deepkin Flesh. And with that Deepkin Flesh applied, that's all the skin highlighted up to that ghostly pale look of House Delaque. So now with some Mephiston red, I'm going to paint the sort of lenses that he's got in his eyes. So this model's got one here in his eye. He's also got one on his forehead as well. So I'm catching both of those with some Mephiston red. And then with some Wild Rider red, I'm going to put a thin line at sort of the bottom right hand point of each one of these lenses. And then with some White Scar, I'm just going to put a spot in the top left of each lens as well. With those lenses painted, the only thing left to do now is to highlight the metal areas on the model. So to start with, I'm coming in with Stormhost Silver. For this, I'm going to highlight everything we paint with Lead Belcher. So I'm just giving it an edge highlight on all the sharpest points of anything we paint with Lead Belcher. And with Liberator Gold, I'm going to do the same for anything we paint with Retributor Armour. Just catch the sharpest on most raised points with a thin edge highlight of Liberator Gold. And with those final highlights applied, we've now painted a ganger for House Delaque. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know in the comments down below, what's your favourite house from Necromunda? Don't forget to like and subscribe, and happy painting!